Okay, so if you're like me, sometimes you just want to be with your friends, right? You just feel like you're isolated. I know, especially ever since COVID, there's been, more isolation than ever before, and especially with women, especially with moms. And so in this isolation, what we yearn for is companionship. We yearn for the feeling of togetherness. We yearn for hearts beating in tandem for the same cause. And that's why I was so delighted to find out about the book Sister Roar, finally allowing women to come together and get their voice back. Because if the enemy has quieted you, then I feel that the Spirit of God right now is saying, get your voice back, girl. It is time to speak up. It is time to profess and decree a thing and watch it be established. So today I'm super excited because we're going to talk about, what is Sister Roar? What does that group momentum look like? What does it feel like to get your voice back? And I'm talking with Miss Kay and Lisa Robertson. You know them from Duck Dynasty. They're amazing. They are blessings to this world, and they are gifts to you today because they are going to be our guests on Crazy Blessed. Miss Kay and Lisa, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Well, thanks for asking us. Yeah.
Such a blessing. I got to tell you, I was in the store the other day and I saw a copy of Sister Roar. I picked it up and I was showing my husband and I said, what a great book. Look at them. This is amazing. Like I pulled up your book before this interview even came up. So I was so delighted to talk with you today because this is something that my heart yearns for, is that collective experience for women of faith to come together and change the world. We have that power. So what was this desire? What led you to write Sister Roar?
Well, we both noticed, and we do ministry together. We do it separately. Yeah. And, but, Kay is the one that taught me about ministry. But we just noticed, both of us did, that during the pandemic that, Satan, he just quieted us. You didn't hear much, and we just thought, we've got to get these girls back out, and they've got to find a passion again. Because, whenever you're not meeting with your brothers and sisters, you can't find that strength that you need. Right. You're going, and then it's a perfect time for Satan to strike. And then he just, throws all these struggles in there. And so we just said, we've got to write something. We've got to get people, back to meeting together and, holding each other accountable, but also building each other up. And so we just decided that we wanted to do a book together, and just talk about that.
I love it. And we know from scripture that we all have an enemy, right? And he goes about like a roaring lion seeking whom to devour. And think about how a lion hunts. He doesn't look for the animal in the middle of the tribe, right? He looks for the one going away. He looks for the one in isolation. He looks for the one that is alone. And that is the target. And so I think the enemy, he can't come up with anything new. There's no spirit of creativity in him. All he can do is take what is created and distort it. And so I think what he does is first tries to get us separated and isolated. And if he can do that, then he can start to steal, kill, and destroy. So when I saw you have this book out, I said, there is no better time than now, because I have never heard from so many women who feel alone right now. And so let's talk to that woman, because there's someone watching or listening right now who's like, those girls are reading my mail. Like I have felt like everyone, like I don't have companionship. I can't be real and vulnerable. I can't be honest. I feel alone. I remember talking with this one mom, and this will probably break your heart, but she said, I truly felt like if I was dead and gone tomorrow, no one would even miss me. Mm-hmm. And this is our heart cry. What would you say to that woman right now who's listening and saying, but you don't understand, I really do. I really am alone here.
You want to say? Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you don't have Jesus, I understand that. I was there. And you know what? I thought, because I was a kind person, and I was, but I wasn't perfect. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. You know that. And yet, let me tell you what was life-saving for me was I had a grandmother that I lived with half my life, not because my parents didn't want me, they just worked all the time. We had the only big store in our whole town, and they just worked themselves to death. So I was with her to my blessing, because we would sit on the swing, we'd plant flowers, we'd gather flowers, we would do so many things. I even had a little Shetland pony named Tony, and we'd tie him to a limb on the tree, and I would run and jump on that and do tricks, and I would think I was Annie Oakley just riding, and I would go.
I can see what you're seeing in your mind. You're seeing like the pistols and the hat and everything.
That's right.
And I had the little flannel hat, and what I would do every Sunday when my mother took me to church was I hid that hat, but when I walked in that church, not with her, I had that flannel dirty hat on. And the minute she saw that, or somebody told her, she said, get that hat off and hang it up there with the men's hats. So every Sunday there was all the men's hats and my little flannel cowboy hat, because I was Annie Oakley when I wanted to.
I love it.
And that was, that was one of my fondest memories. But that's a thing I want to let out to grandmothers right now. I'm talking to any woman, but especially try to teach your children young about God, about Jesus, about cool Bible stories, because they can be if you really try. And I'm telling you, there's nothing as important as that is.
That's right.
And I was so glad that I had a grandmother that poured into me. And she didn't go, she got married at 15, dropped out of school at 13, because they were so poor. They actually wanted their kids to all get out.
Yeah. And
that's why they married so young. That's why they did that. And all of a sudden they found themselves just, with, all of a sudden she said, I would make something, it was so bad I had to throw it out the back door and start over. They didn't know, but they learned.
They learned. And they were patient with themselves. And I think sometimes, what you touched on is we forget that in the simplicity is so much abundance. Like we think abundance is out there somewhere and getting the next thing and achieving the next goal. And we forget that it could be right there, sitting at the table with your kids in that place of gratitude. We forget how vital that is and how important that is. And we're grandmothers. And that's the desire of my heart. Now that, I've raised kids to adulthood, is seeing that not the traditions of man to be repeated, but the promises of God to come to fruition. And I think that is so vital that we get back to that and operate in that place of gratitude and operate in that place of abundance right now, and to stop and look at our blessings. But what you said, Ms. Kay, I need to reiterate that. You said without Jesus, you can totally understand that. Yeah. But with Jesus, things change. That's why, like if I was at your house, okay, Lisa, let's say I'm at your house and you say, hey, whatever you do, don't go use that toilet because it's broken. And then you told me again, now make sure, Hannah, you don't go use that toilet because, and you told me again, I'm like, I am not going to go use that toilet because it's probably going to drown me if I flush it. Mm-hmm. So we know if you tell somebody something 3 times, it's got to be vital. So I remember reading in the Bible when Jesus said, I will not leave you. Right. And I said that he didn't just tell me once, he told me 3 times. That's how important it was that he get this in our heart, that even in the times in your life, and you will have them, when you feel no one understands, no one is there, I'm there. I am there in the middle. You can't do anything bad enough that it would change my love. You can't do anything good enough that it would change my love, because my love is always there for you. And so without Jesus, you're right. So maybe that first decision is, do I have a relationship with Jesus? Easiest thing in the world, easiest thing is just that prayer to say, Jesus, I want you to be Lord of my life. Take my heart, take my life, do something with it. It can be just that simple heart cry. Yeah. But I think with that,
Hannah, right. One of the things is even as a Christian, sometimes we've been taught that the things that we do, we've got to keep those things hidden because, people wouldn't understand this and, people wouldn't respect us if we did this. But what we need is to be open and honest with other sisters, because whenever you confess your sins one to another, that's when the Lord begins to heal you. And none of us are perfect. And so whenever we confess to one another, we just need to gather one another up. We need to love on one another. We need to encourage one another. But guilt and shame are the things that keep us from that. And guess where those come from? They come from the devil. Yeah. And all of his lies has a little bit of truth in them, just enough for us to believe them, just a little. And so that's what he does. What he does is he comes in and he says, well, you can't talk about that. I mean, just think about what you did. I'll take myself, for instance. I am now a pro-life advocate. I am there for the babies and the mamas. I want to do everything I can for that. Well, but Satan every once in a while will come in and say, but remember, you took a life, because I had an abortion at 16. So, you took that life. You can't talk about this. But here's what I say. Whoa, Satan. I've been redeemed from that. I have been forgiven. The Lord has set me free. And you better bet that I will not shut up until the Lord comes to get me. I am going to talk for the babies, for saving lives. And, and Kay has that with marriage. She has that same exact passion for marriage. And I believe that those passions are what make our roar, And so even as a Christian, sometimes if we allow Satan, and the pandemic, I believe, was totally his work, Yeah. And so what happened during that time is that he came in and told us all these lies because we're not gathering, we're not with anybody. And so we just shut up and we just sat back and, didn't say a word. But I tell you, once some of us got our voices back, and I think of those mamas in those schools, in those school board meetings. And, once they figured out what their children were being taught, they found their voice. That was their passion. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to find out what our passion is. Whatever your passion is probably what your roar is going to be. But a passion is usually what we've been forgiven of also. Our greatest failures are usually our most treasured passion. That's what we're going for, and going all in and talking about.
That's so beautiful. Well, look at Paul. Like that Satan was constantly like, how can you talk about Jesus like this? You were killing Christians.
That's exactly
you were
right.
a murderer. How dare you? And Paul said, this one thing I do, I'm not looking back. I am looking forward. So he knew if I start looking back at my past, I will become that. If I'm looking at who I am now, who God is creating in me, I become that. So we get to choose which one am I going to put more belief in. That's sin or my redemption. Mm-hmm. And I love it how you said that place where your passion is usually that place where you've received forgiveness, where you've received redemption. And here's why. Just like Jesus had to go into the wilderness to help people get out of their own sin, we have to use our experiences to be able to saddle up next to people and say, no, you're good. You're good here. You're safe. I got you. I know you. Now let's walk out of this. And if we look at what shame and condemnation does, it makes us shut up.
That's right.
Because we don't want to say, we want to get smaller and smaller, exactly where Satan wants us. And the last thing Satan wants us to know is the redemptive power of Jesus Christ, because then we're going to start speaking up. Then that's when we get that dusty flannel cowboy hat on, and we're like, no, I'm calling the shots here. This is who I am. I have been made new through Jesus. And so whatever that is, if you're listening and watching right now and you're like, oh, but Lisa, Miss Kay, you don't know like my past or what I've done or how I behaved, or like Jesus knows. And guess what? He loves you immensely. Nothing changed about that love.
He didn't turn his back on us we turned our back on him. And we did that because of the shame and the guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. This is amazing. So that person who's like, okay, I can be forgiven of that. I believe I can be forgiven of that. But how do I get my roar back? How do I get my voice back? How do I, sisters? What would you tell that person?
I would say that you've got to get you a group of women together who maybe share the same passion, or maybe just have different passions, but isn't all of our passion to glorify God? Right. I mean, that's what our most important passion is anyway, is to glorify God. So you grab you a group of women who have that same passion to give everything to the Lord, and you have a small group. Look, it could be 1 or 2, it could be 5 or 6, it could be 20. But you get together and you draw your strength and your support from those women. And I've had people tell me before, yeah, but see, people won't respect me if I say this or if I say that. I have people all the time that say, I respect so much that you can tell, all those things. I can't imagine. You're so brave. You're so courageous. And I'm like, look, I have the Lord on my side. Why not be brave and courageous? Right. No one can take what he has offered me away from me. I can give it away, but no one can take it away. So you grab a group of women and you find out what that passion is and just explore. Ask the Lord to reveal to you, Lord, what do I need to have a passion for? And he will reveal to you, what the work that he wants you to do.
Yeah, that's good. Because, he says, if you lack wisdom, ask me. I'll give it to you. Like if you're lacking wisdom, right. I don't know where to go from here, how to find my people, how to find my voice. Ask God. He will not withhold that. He will give you clear direction. And I know some people are like, well, I don't know if I can hear from God. Absolutely, you can, because in the Bible it says that we will recognize the voice of our good shepherd, and the stranger's voice we will not heed. And so understand, if we operate in the spirit of God, I hear you. And I know you're not going to let me get this wrong. So show me where I go with this, because those places where we have been most damaged and most hurt, whether it was pain we created or pain that was placed in our life, because women have both, right? Mm-hmm. We know that scar tissue is stronger than skin. And that place where we got damaged, that place where we were in pain and we thought we could never get it back, God will restore, because he's in the business of restoration. That's right. And he even said that those things that came against you, that enemy, that's going to be your footstool. Watch how high you rise when you're able to say, this happened. And guess what? I'm here for all the healing, because I think that's where God can lead us further. And I love that you share that. Like, ask God. He'll tell you. He'll give you the direction. Mm-hmm. That's so good. So I'm thinking a beautiful way that women could do this is use your book. Like, use Sister Roar. Right. Get some people together, some like-minded believers, and say, hey, does anyone want to go through this book together? Like, let's get our roar back and watch what happens, right?
That's right. That's right. And we give practical ways to do that in here. When Kay started hers, it was a muffins group, and the reason why they called them muffins is because they met in the morning and they ate muffins. Yeah, that was her muffins group.
I didn't know what to call it. And one of the girls said, why don't we call it, because we're eating muffins here every time, drinking something and eating muffins, why don't we call it the Muffin Group? And that's what we called it. And then they had a very big picture that somebody painted for me, and it was of a muffin and all that. And at the bottom, it was signed by all the girls that were in that group from one time to another. Yeah. Because it was a lot of years, so it was a lot of turnover. Yeah. In that one group. But
I would love to get an invitation to your muffin group. That would be fun. I'd love to go up for a muffin.
Well, yeah, actually, I've been working for a long time, and we have the muffin group, and then they called us because you might not know about Celebrate Recovery, which is, trying to get everybody off their addictions and all that. Right. We had a lot of women that would come there and they just knew nothing. And then they said, Miss Kay, will you, somebody in the leadership, because they knew I love small groups and all that. What about y'all taking one of the houses of women, which would be about 5? So me and another sister would go to that house and we would study. Now, these women, let me tell you what their background was. They're in trouble and they're in front of the court. And the court can say, you can go to this Christian recovery group or you're going to jail. You're one or the other. So I have talked to some this is a kind of a separate and apart from my other muffin group.
Yeah.
And, but why not try the same principles with these? Because we're actually teaching them about how to come to Jesus and about life and about how much he loves you and forgives you. And, they would say, well, you don't know my husband hit me. I said, oh, really? Mine was horrible. He was 10 years of the worst man that was ever created. I mean, I would always say he's such a jerk. I never married a jerk, but now I've got one now. What do you do with him?
Wow.
And you know what? My grandmother, who had taught me all my life, I stayed with her half my life. And she would always tell me about, now you're going to get married and it's going to be so different, but you're going to learn how to take care of him and your home and have children and all that. And she said, but you got to remember this, Kay. If you don't remember anything else, you must fight for your marriage. And then I just looked at her like she fell out of a tree. And I said, why would I have to fight for my marriage? I'm going to marry. I know. And it's really funny. I had my credentials out for what I wanted, which I like the athletes, which I wound up with a quarterback from college that went to college. And then I wound up with somebody who hunts and fishes like my daddy did. And see, I lost him when I was 14 years old, my dad. So Phil and I had kind of dated. We were set up on a blind date. Actually, we had no idea. This older classmate girl decided that we would make the cutest couple. But back then, the girls never approached the boys. That was just not done. But it was the older years, and that's how we were. Yeah. So she told me that the quarterback, Phil Robertson, wanted me to walk him off the field after the game. And she told Phil that, Kay, I was Caraway then, Kay Caraway, the cheerleader, she wants to walk you off the field. So
she was setting you up.
She set me up, and what's so crazy, so we did, just hit it off, and he was exactly what I planned for. And I said to somebody, maybe I only said it to God, but I said, I think that that's who I want for my husband because he has everything like I like. And then I thought about those silly things. And then he said about, fighting for you. I said, I wouldn't have to fight for him, And so it's so funny because we went together the first year. Then I should have known something when he broke up with me because I was interfering with his hunting season.
Oh, so yeah.
That should have been a red flag right there,
That should have been a red flag, Miss Kay.
And I didn't. I just went on. We both dated other people in that year. And that May, when the 2 weeks before school was to be out, is when my dad suddenly passed away with a heart attack at 49 years old. And, my world was just crushed.
Yeah.
And he was at the funeral. A lot of my classmates were at the funeral, but he was there. And he sent a note to me that he wanted to talk to me later when I felt like talking. And gave me his number again. And so we hooked back up, I guess you'd say. And that was it. I just said, this is it. And I think he knew. He said, you're who I want. I should have broke up with you for hunting season, which that really made me feel good that he would admit it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, 60 years later, we're still together.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful.
And it wasn't easy. The first years what I would think hell might be like.
Yeah.
When Satan overcame Phil and lived in him that 10 years.
Yeah.
Then that was the hardest 10 years of my life. I actually feel like they said it's like you're fighting a war, and I was. The good and evil were fighting.
Yeah. And you were holding ground. You were holding ground. And I don't think you would have
everybody told me to leave him. Everybody said leave him.
Wow.
And you know what? I kept thinking about my grandmother's words. You will find somebody. You will marry them. But here's you fight for your marriage. And she said, and he will be your husband till you die. You stay together and don't ever do that bad word. And I was like, what bad word? She said, divorce.
Wow.
Sometimes it's necessary. But she said, more people do not fight for their marriage or they wouldn't be divorced. Now, I know there's reasons. I do. And I wouldn't have any woman take abuse, even though I took a little bit myself. But only one time was he ever where I thought I could lose my life. And it was because his drink of the night was moonshine.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but that will make you as crazy as a loon. I mean, it's a wonder to me anybody's ever drank that lived.
And lived, right?
I think he might have had a bad wreck, and because he had about 4 during his bad days. And one time he hit a tree that they said they didn't know how he lived. There was no way.
But God had his hands on him. He had his hands on your marriage. And because of that, like, think about if you felt like you couldn't share that, how many other people would not now be motivated? You know what? God's got something in this. I'm going to stay. God's got something for me. God is my rescuer. He's my defender. He's my vindicator. And he can make the wrongest things right. And it's just so beautiful. I love that you share that, because I think it helps a lot of women feel closer to you, Ms. Kay. And it helps. And just like, Lisa, when you share about your past, it helps women say, okay, she's my sister. Like, I get it. She's raw with me. She's real with me. So I don't have to be so protected, and I don't have to walk in shame.
And let me tell you what somebody told me the first speech I ever gave, because I was not your best student in the class. I was not. And I just wasn't into education, I guess. I love certain parts of it, but all I didn't. In fact, I had a teacher advise me, not everybody's not for college, Miss Kay. And I said, I know you're talking about me. I got it. I know I'm not for college.
I know what you're saying.
I know what I want to be, and I'm not ashamed of that. Everybody can't be so smart. Everybody, but I can be loving. I can love people. And the patience I had in that first 10 years, I got that strictly from my grandmother's work. She was a very godly lady. She always talked about him. She always said, no matter what, if you have Jesus, no matter what's going on in your life, you can make it. You can make it. You just got to hold on and let God. And that's what I seriously did. And I lost family members when they got so mad at me for not leaving him. His family got mad.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, they were all like, you're just taking this, you're taking this. You don't have to do that. And, I said, the Bible said you're supposed to be married. If you are, you fight for it.
Wow.
That's what Nanny
said. That was
your
grandmother coming out. That was your grandmother coming out right there.
And of all her words, she told me, I'm so glad that I held on to those.
Praise God. Because look at what happened in his life, and what a blessing that, your marriage has been to millions of people.
And I'm going to tell you one thing, and I'm going to be quiet and let Lisa talk.
No, I love it.
Really and truly, I mean, I just saw when Phil became a Christian, he said to me, he looked right in my face and he said, Kay, all those people I've encouraged to go to have Satan in their life. I've encouraged this one, that one, because he was kind of a leader in every way. And his mother told me when he's 6 years old, she went to pick him up from school, and he was standing on the top of the stairs going down, and he had a little crowd, and he was telling probably hunting stories or fishing, but they were all just listening to him. So he had a leadership thing right there going.
Yeah.
And what he told me, he said, my one goal to be for this Jesus that I have now, he said, is all those people that I led to Satan, I'm going to lead to Jesus. And he's had that mission. And he immediately asked our preacher to go on every Bible study, do everything. And if he didn't ask him, Phil would be so mad. And I'm going to tell you something. He just went into, and I called him, and I have from then on the modern day John the Baptist, preparing the way.
That's right.
Yes.
And he took off, and he never stopped. And at his age now, he never slows down in reaching the lost. He never gives up. He never slows down. And even the ones who have just fallen away and lost their way, he never stops.
Yeah. Well, that's the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, because God never stops seeking us. His love never stops chasing us down.
That's right.
It is unrelenting. It is fail-proof. This fierce love that will, and sometimes when people are hurting and in pain, my prayer for them is like, God, everywhere they run, let them run into you.
Yeah, that's right.
Everywhere they run. So I think I thank you so much for being just real and sharing that, because I think that's going to inspire a lot of people right now, even in a place where they may be having a rocky marriage, or they may be having a hard time with one of their kids, or maybe they're having a financial trouble, that they know, what, in the middle of this, just like the word says, after done everything, just stand. Just stand in that word. Stand on the promise of God that he will never leave you, and you can't go wrong there.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much. Ladies, you are magnificent. You're incredible.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining forces to write this book, and also helping just liberate women from this stifling silence that the enemy has tried to put on us.
Right.
Yeah.
Praise God. I hear voices rising, ladies.
That's right.
Voices are rising.
Right.
And you know what? You don't have to be smart to talk.
No.
I learned
Praise
that
God.
the first time I stood up to speak. It was in Ruston, Louisiana, a little church, Baptist church, I think. And I just stood there because I was like, I've never spoke to ladies before. So I was just silent. And the lady that brought me over went up and whispered to me. She said, all you need to do now, you told me you had a story from God in how your relationship was so torn and yet so put back together. She said, was that not true? And I said, no, that was true. I said, he did it. He did it. And she said, okay, stop right now. That whole story, tell it.
Yes.
And I started talking, and they had to go back and play the organ to get me to be quiet. That's true.
That is. Well, I was put in special education. I was a challenge. I was put in special ed. I wasn't able to learn. It's like, you know what? The Holy Spirit is not looking for your ability. He's looking for your availability. And when we say yes, he's like, let's go.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I love this. Ladies, it's time to get your voice back. Join forces, and you will be blessed like crazy.